Hi, Catherine. Hi, welcome to everybody. This is Tuesday night, April 2nd, and this is a class on the Kanzeon chant, or more officially known as the Extend Life 10-phrase Kannon Sutra, or Enmai Jukku Kannon Gyo. And we're going to do the chant several times tonight, talk about it, have whatever discussion, go in whatever direction people are interested in going in and what we talk about. But the first thing we're going to do is actually chant it together. So I'm going to share my screen and make sure everybody is muted and then play recording.
Enmai Jukku Kannon Gyo.
Kanzeon namu butsu yo butsu en yo butsu en buppo so en joraku ga shonen kanzeon bonen kanzeon nen nen jushinki nen nen furishin kanzeon namu butsu yo butsu en yo butsu en buppo so en joraku ga
Okay, so I would like to, as we start here, I prepared a number of slides, but I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time looking at the slides, but I do want to spend a little bit of time looking at just a few of the slides, just to go over a few things that I think are important to have in terms of useful information. Let me try to get through this very quickly, actually. Okay. And let's see, here we go. All right. So this slide just shows the what was on the slide that we saw while we were chanting. It just has the Chinese characters, which is how the chant is originally in Chinese. The next slide is going to start talking a little bit about the history of the chant. This is the phonetic spelling of the pronunciation of the Chinese characters. according to the Japanese pronunciation. And this is actually a fairly literal English translation, character by character. So this is not really the kind of translation that usually people try to translate it so that it seems more, well, actually sometimes people try to translate it so that it could be something that is chanted as opposed to chanting the this here. It never ends up sounding nearly as good though, the translation, in my opinion. Okay, so just real quickly, I want to talk about, you can see this map over here, right? Everybody can see the, okay, and I've got Korea, Japan, China, and Taiwan all marked on this map for a reason. The chant originally comes from China as far back as 400 AD, so like 1600 years ago. And so it's called a sutra, but no one actually attributes this to having been taught by Shakyamuni Buddha when he was alive 2,500 years ago. What happened was that several people reported to have dreams in which Avalokiteshvara, or Kwanse Bosal, or Kanzeon, appeared to them and taught them this chant. And there's at least 3 different people to whom those dreams were attributed to. They were all people who had been condemned to death and had this dream on the night before their execution, and they were saved after chanting this all night prior to their scheduled execution. That's one of the reasons why it's called the Extend Life 10-phrase Kannon Sutra. Now, so it originates in China, but in China itself, there's another related chant that's actually quite a bit longer called the High King Avalokiteshvara chant that is still very, very, very popular among Chinese Buddhists. This shorter version of that chant, which only has 10 phrases, died out in China, but not before being transmitted to Japan, where it was never extremely widespread as far as I can tell, but only in the year 1766. That's the year that Hakuin discovered this chant, the Japanese Zen master Hakuin, and he became a very active promoter and popularizer of this chant for the rest of his life. He lived another 22 years. He was already 60 years old at this time. And then let's see what's on the next slide. Here we go. Oh yeah, and so this is a slide that just gives more about the historical background. These slides will be available to people to download and look at to your heart's content. This book by Chun Fang Yu is an excellent source of information on the actual history of this chant, which is pretty complicated. But she does an excellent job of making it as simple as possible. As I said, the chant pretty much was only known in Japan for many, many centuries until relatively modern times, actually until very modern times. A Chinese Zen master, Sheng Yen, who was originally from mainland China, but who ended up in Taiwan after the 1949 revolution. He barely made it out. But he became very well known, and he actually, in addition to having many students in the United States and in Europe, he also had a lot of contacts in Japan. And so he visited Japan many times, and he heard this chant, and he'd never heard this chant before. And he looked at it, and it's in Chinese. It's just the Japanese have their own way of pronouncing the characters, and he could read it, and he said, "Oh, interesting." And he did a little research and found that it was originally from China, and it just been died out. And he took it back with him to Taiwan, where it's now quite popular in Taiwan. Although the version that he kind of popularized in Taiwan is set to music, and so it sounds very different. And so it's set to music, and they use the Mandarin pronunciation of the characters, and so it sounds very different from this very, very rhythmic chanted version in Japanese using the Japanese pronunciation. And then of course my teacher, Zen Master Daigak, independently, who also, even though his primary connection is with Korean Buddhism by way of Zen Master Seung San, his teacher. He also has studied with Japanese groups and teachers, and was familiar with this chant and introduced it to his students, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. I'm not sure how long ago it was that he started teaching it as part of his practice and the practice of his students. Okay, so the other slides are just going into like the meaning of the chant, and so that's one direction we can go. One thing I definitely want to do is talk about the mechanics, if you will, of actually doing the chant, because that's I think more than anything else, that's what I want to do. How many people here do the Kanzeon chant on any kind of a regular basis as part of your own practice? Yeah. So one thing that Hakuin strongly encouraged was to use this chant as a mantra. And so if you're familiar with Zen Master Seung San, which I think most of you are, Tiffany may not be as familiar with Zen Master Seung San, but so he was a Korean Zen master who came to the United States, actually traveled all over the world, and today has students and groups all over the world. He placed a great deal of emphasis in his teaching on chanting. And one of the reasons why he placed a great deal of emphasis on chanting was because he himself was a great practitioner of chanting, and he became a Zen master, essentially, became a realized Zen master by chanting the Great Dharani, which was his mantra. And so Hakuin encouraged people to use the Kanzeon chant the same way that Zen Master Seung San used the Great Dharani, which is something that Zen Master Seung San just repeated all the time. And in fact, in the Kanzeon chant, the last part of the Kanzeon chant says, "In the morning Kanzeon, in the evening Kanzeon," and which is kind of an allusion to this kind of practice. So you don't need to practice the Kanzeon chant in that way, but actually that's an excellent way of learning the Kanzeon chant if you do it a lot. Then if you do any kind of chant a lot, you will find it rolling around in your head, which is one of the wonderful things about doing a lot of chanting practice, is that it pushes out a lot of the old TV shows and songs from the radio. It takes some of that space up. It becomes resident in your. It becomes part of the noise, but as noise goes, this is very high quality noise now. Now you have some dharmic noise floating around your head, which is actually a big improvement. Okay, so we can talk about doing the chant. We can talk about doing the moktak. This is a very good chant for practicing your moktaking with. We can talk about what the chant means. I'm gonna open the floor here for where we want to go with this. Otherwise, you're in danger of me just kind of pushing it where I want it to go. So one thing I would like to do is, so we listen to the recording, and one thing that's, in the recording, there's not only the sound of the moktak, there's also the sound of the bell. And so the way that the chant is usually done with a group is that one person is playing the moktak or some sort of wooden instrument, like this frog rasp, and keeping the rhythm. And then another person hits the bell every time we say Kanzeon. So I think it's 3 times. So it's the chant goes. So you don't have to have a moktak, you don't have to have a bell, and you don't even really have to chant it. You can just say Enmai Jukku Kannon Gyo, that's the title, and then the chant goes Kanzeon, Namu Butsu, Yo Butsu Uen, Yo Butsu Uen, Bupo So En, Jo Raku Ga Jo, Chonen Kanzeon, Bonen Kanzeon, Nennen Jushin Ki, Nennen Furi Shin. And so when you do that, you say Kanzeon 3 times. And so if you're doing the full-blown version of it with a group of people, one person is hitting the moktak, and another person is hitting the bell every time we say Kanzeon. And also usually the way that I've always done it, and the way that I've seen other people do it, is that you start off relatively slowly, and then you do it 3 times at a relatively slow pace. Some groups start off very, very slow. But then you do it 3 times at a slow pace, then 3 times at kind of a moderate pace, and then 3 times at a rapid pace. And so I'm not sure if there's anything particularly significant about the number 9, but that's the way I've always done it, is to do it 9 times, 3 times slow, 3 times medium, 3 times fast. And then another way of doing the chant is a tradition that many Japanese Buddhists do, is they do the chant at midnight on New Year's Eve, and you have to work out the logistics, the timing of this, the choreography really, and so that you finish you do it 108 times, and you finish the 108th repetition of the chant at the stroke of midnight. And I once had the opportunity of leading a group that did that, and at 5 minutes until midnight, I realized that I was going to have to go really fast to, which we did. We made it. We got it. But it was, I didn't plan ahead well enough for that. But so I'm going to do it once. And so I do have a moktak. And oh yeah, one thing that I did find that if you go to, sometimes this can be really hard to find a moktak. And like a month or so ago, I was looking around for places that had moktaks that you could purchase. And the only place I found was like $150 for nothing fancy, a traditional moktak like this. Now they actually, if you go to Amazon, I'm not promoting Amazon, but I can't find them anywhere else. But you can actually get a Korean style moktak if you search on Amazon for wooden fish. The moktak in Korean actually means wooden bell, but for some reason it kind of looks like a fish. See? Anyway, so I'm gonna do the chant just like 2 times, okay, just as a demonstration, and then I don't know if anybody else wants to demonstrate their own chanting abilities, but that would be really good. But I'm just going to go through. Actually, I'm going to do it once with the moktak, and then I'm going to chant it once just without the moktak. Okay. So, and also in one thing that's good about using a moktak like this, which is that you can get it to bounce. And so when you're doing the moktak, who here has ever led a group in chanting doing the moktak? All right, so you're familiar with bouncing the moktak then. Yeah, so when you bouncing the moktak, well, yeah, and it depends. Some moktaks bounce better than others. But what I mean by bouncing the moktak is it's also called the roll down. So the roll down is like this, and this is the signal to bow. And Zen Master Sung San used to always say, when sitting, follow the chukpi, which is the wooden instrument that's used to signal the beginning and the end of sitting periods. He said, when sitting, follow the chukpi. When chanting, follow the moktak. And so the moktak not only tells you the rhythm of the chant, but it also tells you when to bow. And this is what it sounds like when the moktak is telling you to bow. And so you start off slowly, and they go faster. And then at the end, you let it bounce. And the bouncing makes rapid, increasingly decreasing in volume hits. So now, where's my... This is my little frog grasp. Frog grasps, or any kind of hollow wooden instrument, they work perfectly well for keeping the rhythm, but they're not that great at bouncing. It just doesn't bounce. And the where's my medium-sized frog grasp? Oh, here it is. So that was my $10 frog grasp. This is the $15 model, that was 2 inches. This is 4 inches. This actually has kind of a better sound, but it also, yeah, maybe I can get it with this. No. Anyway.
What if you tried bouncing it off its belly?
Bouncing it off what? The belly?
The belly of it.
Well, let's see. Let me try. Yeah, it doesn't sound good on the belly. Yeah, to get it to it's something about the physics of it. You have to have something that's fairly heavy that you're hitting it with, and it has to be hitting against something that is also fairly heavy, so that otherwise it just, anyway. But if you find something, any sort of wooden instrument that sounds like that, you can use to keep the rhythm. And then if you find something that makes a nice rhythm, you can also check to see if you can get it to bounce. If not, you can still use it. And when you're doing chanting on your own, it's good to practice. It's good to learn how to do the moktak, okay? But at the same time, you certainly don't need a moktak to chant on your own. And anyway, so enough talking. I'm just gonna do the whole chant, starting with the roll down. So when you do a roll down like that, then you hit the moktak once, and that's a signal to come back up. So sometimes people and that's not necessarily a universal rule, but it always is kind of funny when you bow, and I'm pretty well trained. I mean, trained in the sense of I just kind of do it automatically, that I wait until I hear to come back up. And sometimes it doesn't happen. But anyway, all right. So now I'm going to do I'm going to do it just one time through, including the bow at the beginning and at the end. Enmai Jukku Kannon Yo Kanzeon Namu Butsu Yo Butsu en Yo Butsu en Buppo So en Joraku Ga Jochon en Kanzeon Bon en Kanzeon Nen Nen Jushin Ki Nen Nen Furishin. All right. So one thing that is interesting about I'm gonna share my screen here just to make this easier to see. Let's see. Go back. Oh yeah. All right. So in Chinese, every character is one syllable. And and in if you're and this chant, we even though I'm primarily trained in the Korean Buddhist tradition, and so the chants that I've learned to do for the most part are either in English or they are in what's called Sino-Korean, which is the Korean pronunciation of the Chinese characters. This chant is different because it's in the Japanese pronunciation of the Chinese characters, called Sino-Japanese. And I've actually considered, trying to figure out what. So you could, and this is what Zen Master Sheng Yen did. He just took this chant and put the Mandarin pronunciation to the characters, which makes perfect sense since he was teaching it to people who are native speakers of Chinese and who can read these characters, and who know how the characters are pronounced in their own native language. But you could also put the Korean pronunciation on these, but it doesn't really work, in my opinion. It doesn't sound, and people are accustomed. People in the West have generally learned this chant from the Japanese Zen tradition, and sometimes, actually, a lot of times people think that this is a Japanese chant, but it's actually just it's in Chinese with the Japanese pronunciation. But there is the one reason why I'm talking about this is that sometimes when the Japanese are pronouncing Chinese characters, they give it 2 syllables. So, Butsu is one way of pronouncing the character for Buddha. And in Mandarin or in Korean, this would just be 1 syllable, bull, or something like, or fo in Mandarin, I think it is. But in the Japanese pronunciation, it's 2 syllables, but, and this is one thing that you can see more clearly when you're using a motok, Namu Butsu Yo Butsu U, and so even though it's 2 syllables, the 2 syllables are said very fast in the time of 1 beat. So it's 2 syllables but only 1 beat, and that actually kind of adds to the rhythmic quality of the chant. There's one other place in the chant where that happens, and that is on this line down here, Jo Raku Ga Jo, which is a very interesting part of the chant. Jo Raku Ga Jo, Jo Raku Ga Jo, and so Raku is again, it's 2 syllables, but it's said in 1 beat. So you say Jo Raku Ga Jo Chonen, and the rest of the chant is all 1 character, 1 syllable, 1 beat, including this place, Bupo Soen, where instead of Butsu, now the character for Buddha is being pronounced as Bu or Boop, and just 1 syllable and 1 beat. So that's just that. I think it's interesting, and it's also part of what gives the chant its rhythm. Is those 3 places where you have a 2 syllables being pronounced in the space of 1 beat. Is there? Let's see. Oh yeah. So I don't think I did. I should also just demonstrate what it's like. You can just say it on your own, and you can use, if you use it as a I won't say it really fast, but just, to say it, you can say Enmai Jukku Kannon Gyo, and it's usually good to say the title, even if you're using it as a mantra and you're going to say it over and over again. It's usually good to say the title of the mantra at the beginning. And you say Enmai Jukku Kannon Gyo, Kanzeon Namu Butsu Yo Butsu En Yo Butsu En Bupo So En Jo Raku Ga Jo Chonen Kanzeon Bonen Kanzeon Nenen Jushin Ki Nenen Fudishin. And then you can continue doing that. If you have a little mala or a little wrist mala or a 108 bead neck mala, you can keep track of how many times you're doing it. Hakuin was a big fan of doing it 100 times. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now, at least for a minute. The legendary stories about the origin of the chant actually focuses on how short it is, because what happened to these people who were condemned to death and were scheduled for execution the next morning is they had this dream in the middle of the night where Kanzeon, that is Avalokiteshvara or Kwanzaa Bosal or Kuan Yin, appears to them in the dream. and says, "Oh, don't worry. All you have to do is chant the Lotus Sutra 1,000 times, and you will be saved." And the person says, "I can't. There's not even time to chant the Lotus Sutra once between now and when I'm scheduled to be executed, or maybe a couple times, And then Avalokiteshvara says, "No, I just mean the 25th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, which, if you know the Lotus Sutra, the 25th chapter of the Lotus Sutra is actually devoted to Avalokiteshvara, and it's that chapter of the Lotus Sutra is sometimes referred to as the Kannon Sutra or the Avalokiteshvara Sutra." And the condemned prisoner says, "There's not even enough time to do that 1,000 times." And then Avalokiteshvara says, "Oh, don't you know the short form of the 25th chapter of the Lotus Sutra?" And the prisoner says, "Well, no, but maybe this would be a good time for you to teach it to me." And so she does. And she says, "It's only 10 phrases and you can do it. And it's short enough. Actually, if you do it 1,000 times, which is what the prisoner had to do, it's still, let's see, if you do it, the pace at which we do it in the recording is like 3 minutes long, and we chant it 9 times. If you go really fast, you can do it. Let's see, that's like 3 per minute. You could probably get at least 4 or 5 per minute if you go really, really fast. And then I don't know how long that would take to come up to 1,000, but it's still a lot of repetitions. It's still a significant investment of time and focus to do it 1,000 times. But like the old saying says, few things concentrate the mind like your impending execution. And so the prisoner was very happy to do this. And if you read Chunfang Yu, she's a Chinese American university professor. She actually happens to be was a student of Zen Master Sheng Yen before Zen Master Sheng Yen died. She was born and raised a Buddhist. She tells interesting stories about times when her mother was miraculously saved by Kuan Yin. But her book is really a gold mine of information if you want to know the history of this chant, although it's complicated. Anyway, yeah, so you can do it 1,000 times or 9 times, or you can just do it. Sometimes I do it while I'm doing sitting meditation, and I'll just keep track on my little wrist mala of how many times and you don't have to keep track. Let's see. Is there anybody who wants to give it a try? No. Okay. No pressure. So one thing that I will demonstrate here is, and I know that so I sent out. Did anybody try to play the recording that I sent out in the email that I sent out yesterday? Were you able to play it, Tom? I know Mark wasn't able to. Tom wasn't able to. Deborah. So one thing if you just click on the attachment, it probably won't play. But if you right click on it and download it onto your computer, then it should play. I checked the size. The size is well under. It might depend upon your internet service provider, but it's well under the limitation that Gmail has built into it, which is 25 megs. What's that?
It said that it was in an unsupported format.
Yeah. If you download it, it should download as an MP4 file, and then you should be able to play it if you can play an MP4 file. And if you can't, I'll also send out another link to someplace where you can download it or even listen to it directly on the web. And it's also on YouTube, which is actually the next thing I want to kind of demonstrate. Let's see, what should we do? So How are we doing? Do we need to take a break, or should we just keep going? We okay? I don't. It's. Hi, Tiffany. You okay? Oh,
Yeah, no, I'm here.
uh,
I want to try it.
okay. Excellent. Good.
I want to try it. I'm
Thank
going
you.
to be brave. I can do it. I teach English. I teach phonetics and language all day long. I should be able to do this. So I want to do it. Are you going to put it back on the screen though? Because I don't remember it.
Sorry. Yeah.
I don't have the thingy, but we're going to work
Here
through
we
it.
go. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good.
I start all the way at the top, right?
Yep.
Enmai Jukku kan ojo Kanzeon Namo Batsuyo en Bupo en Joraku go Gajo Chonyen Kanzeon Bonyen Kanzeon Yen Jushin Kinyen Furishin.
Thank you. Excellent. Yeah. It is very wonderful to hear you kind of singing it, which is very nice. And oh yeah, so that is one thing I did want to just show briefly. If you go to, now I'm going to share the screen again. What do I have here? What is this? Oh yeah. So this is an example. I've $21. This is actually more of a Japanese style, but you know, that's fine. And I can't remember what the Japanese pronunciation, Mokogyu or something like that. I think it means, and I think that might actually literally mean wooden fish, whereas in Korean it's called a moktak, which literally means a wooden bell. But this is just an example of, this happened to be on my browser. But what I really wanted to show was what happens if you want to see different versions of this. One way to do that is go to YouTube and put in the phonetically spelled out title like this. And a lot of these recordings will be the same thing, just different people have uploaded the same recording a couple different times. But there's one that I really like. Oh, here's the one that we use in our Saturday and Wednesday meditation group meetings. And some of these are people talking about the chant. Some of them are people putting it to music or whatever. But this is one I really like quite a bit.
Kanzeon Namu Butsu Yobutsu Uin Yobutsu Uen Buppo Soen Joraku Gajo Chonen Kanzeon Bonen Kanzeon Nen Jushinki Nen Furishin Kanzeon Namu Butsu Yobutsu Uin Yobutsu Uen Buppo Soen Joraku Gajo Chonen Kanzeon Bonen Kanzeon Nen Jushinki Nen Furishin.
And I like that particular video just because it's very plain and simple. And also it shows somebody doing it, combining it with walking meditation. Probably literally, it looks like it can't tell where they are, but it's, if you're at a retreat, say at Furnace Mountain, and it's the walking period, Zen Master Daegak likes to have long kind of what he calls free walking periods where people just go out and walk. That would be one way of doing your practice during a free walking meditation period where you're just kind of walking on your own. If you time, instead of using a moktak, just use your footsteps as the rhythm of the chant. I like that. So another thing that I do like, and so one of the things that, so this chant is good if you're facing, it doesn't have to be an impending execution, right? But if you if you want to accumulate the benefits of many repetitions of a certain practice, this is a pretty quick one, but it's not so quick that, I mean, there's enough of it to it that it's, but the shortness also means that it's pretty easy to go through the whole chant character by character and look at what it actually means. And the meaning is actually quite interesting, in my opinion. So I'm going to share my screen again. And yeah. Oh, bring this down. Yeah. So if we go through kind of the historical stuff. So the title of the sutra itself is a little bit interesting. Enmai, in character by character, it really does mean, this means extend, this means life, this means 10, this means phrase. This is the same gu as in Shinmyo Janggu De Dharani, the title of the great Dharani. And Kanzeon, this is Kwanseum is the pronunciation in Korean, the Korean pronunciation. Kwan Chi-yen is more or less the Mandarin pronunciation. Oh no, this is just Kannon. This is Kannon Sutra. This character is Sutra. And actually, since we're using the Japanese pronunciation, I could have used, there's actually a slightly different version of this character that the Japanese prefer to use, but this is the more widely used version of the character. But this is Kannon Sutra. Extend life, 10 phrase, Kannon Sutra. Kanzeon, that's just the name of the Bodhisattva. Namu Butsu, homage to the Buddha, Namu. So Namu is a phrase that shows up in lots of chants. Zen Master Sung San often used to tell people that this means become one with, which is fine, but it literally means to bow to or pay homage to something or someone. And this is just going through the Kannon Gyo part. Oh yeah, this Gyo, this character is the same character that gets translated as Ching, or transliterated into English often as Ching. So in the I Ching or the Tao Te Ching, it's the same, it means sutra. So in Chinese, a sutra is not necessarily just a Buddhist sacred text. It's any highly honored ancient work. Oh yeah, here's Namu Butsu. Okay, so we've already gone through this far. Okay, Yo Butsu U In, and that means Yo means together with, Butsu is Buddha. This means to have, and this means cause. This is very closely related to karma. So basically, these two lines are almost exactly the same, except for that it says with Buddha I have cause, with Buddha I have condition. So causes and conditions are karma. It means so this is looking at karma in a positive way. If you're doing this chant, it means that you have a karmic connection with the Buddha that has brought you to the situation where you're doing this chant, and then so you already have that karmic connection with the Dharma that brings you to do the chant, and then when you actually do the chant, you're strengthening that karmic connection. And then this is reiterated with Bupo Soen, which means Buddha Dharma Sangha connection. And so all of this is just stating, that I have a connection with the Dharma, with the Buddha, with the Sangha, and I am increasing that by doing this practice. Jo Raku Gajo. So these are this is a really interesting part of the chant. Jo is eternal, unchanging, permanent. Raku is joy, happiness, bliss. Ga is self. I mean, this is how in Japanese or Korean or in Mandarin, this is a character that can be used to refer to oneself, me, I. And Jo is purity. And so one of the interesting things about this particular part of the chant is that Buddhist teachings emphasize that everything is impermanent. Buddhist teachings emphasize that we live in a world of suffering. Buddhist teachings emphasize that there is no self. And Buddhist teachings emphasize, as it says in the Heart Sutra, that there is nothing that is tainted or pure in and of itself. But this is saying unchanging, joy, self, pure. And so these are the when Buddhist teaching emphasizes impermanence, suffering, no self, and the fact that nothing is intrinsically pure or impure, that's the teaching on the samsara. Those are all teachings that point to the nature of samsara, which is where we live. And so it's kind of important to have that as the basis for our understanding of the Dharma. But at the same time, these are the characteristics of nirvana. And, you know, it should be, it's kind of obvious that samsara and nirvana are different. Although at the same time, ultimately, if you want to get deep down into Mahayana Buddhist philosophy, you can also see samsara and nirvana as the same. But that's beyond my understanding, and also beyond what we can really talk about in this short class. But this is a really interesting part of the chant. So if you look up the 4 virtues or the 4 attributes of nirvana, if you really want to go deep down into the rabbit hole of what this simple 4-character line of the Kanzeon chant is pointing to, you have to read the Nirvana Sutra, which is one of the longest, and also the Parinirvana Sutra, also sometimes called the Mahayana Mahaparinirvana Sutra. It was the last teaching of the Buddha before he died. And then the last 4 lines are very interesting. Let's see. Jo Rakuga Jo Chonen Kanzeon Bonen Kanzeon. So in the morning, I am mindful of Kanzeon. In the evening, I am mindful of Kanzeon. And so the character that shows up more than any other in this chant is this Nen, which is the character for mindfulness. And so at first, the character appears singly on these 2 lines. And then on the next 2 lines, you have the doubling of the character. And in Chinese, this is a common way of emphasizing something, but nen is more than just nen is more than just very mindful. So nen is mindful. nen means very mindful, but actually it means continuously mindful. So everybody can be mindful for a minute or for a moment, and then it's gone. At least that's the way it is for me. But nen refers to a state of continual mindfulness without a gap in your mindfulness, which is an aspiration. It's an aspiration, and one of the ways of moving towards that aspiration is by practicing this particular chant. And nen jushin ki, nen fudi shin. So nen jushin ki means continuous mindfulness arises from the mind. And then the next line, nen fudi shin, means continuous mindfulness is never separate from the mind. And one of the interesting things about the last line is that this is also the title of a very popular romance novel in Chinese. Uh, uh, and in this, yeah, actually, if you can copy and paste these characters into a Google search field, and one of the things will pop up is this novel. But it so in a Buddhist context, we would say something like mindful, continuous mindfulness is never separate from my mind. But another way of translating this into English is the thought of you is never out of my heart, or the thought of you is never separate from my heart, which makes a perfectly good title for a romance novel. And it's kind of the same thing. It is pointing to the kind of absolute focus on something that people often associate with romantic love, but that's not the only way of looking at it. I think that's kind of funny, actually. Let's see, what else do we got? Oh yeah, here it is. The phrase nen nen fudi shin, literally mindful, mindful, not separate from mind, or less literally, you never leave my heart. It can be used in Mandarin to describe the intense and even obsessive nature, this should be nature, of romantic love. In fact, it is the title of a novel by the Chinese author Wu Yun Ranran, who's a very popular, romance. These are two of her books covers. Neither one of them is this one, I think, but you can find them here and here. I just, but some of the other, this, let's see. Oh yeah. Oh, let me go. One more slide. Yeah, here we go. A bunch of different appearances of the character Nen in everyday popular culture and everyday vernacular use. This word is not just a technical Buddhist term. It means wish, sense, idea, thought, feeling, desire, and it's actually one of the more commonly encountered kanji in Japanese newspapers. In modern Japanese, the word for commemorating or memorating or memory is, let's see, this is kinen. I think that's kinen. And this is keen. Oh yeah, this would be kinen. And this means regret or disappointment. Actually, a lot of the words in Japanese and Chinese that contain this character are unpleasant, because which is kind of a linguistic recognition of the fact that our suffering ultimately comes from our own minds and what we focus on. And a lot of times what we focus on results in suffering. Let's see, what else do I have? Oh yeah. So a lot of the slides that I've used in this are from a much longer series of classes that I did several weeks or a couple months ago, and there's links to it here, and I will send out these slides, and they'll also be available in the description when I post the recorded video of this, as well as not just the slides that I've kind of pulled out for this class, but also all the slides that were used for all of those classes. I know that Tiffany is going to have to leave soon, but I don't particularly have to go anywhere. Are there questions or anything that people want to talk about this chant? Tom, good.
Yeah, I don't know that it's not particular to this chant, but all the translations have both the Chinese and or with when you do Dharma names, you've got the Chinese and the Korean.
Yeah.
Is it common in a Korean temple or monastery for all the monks to study Chinese and to know that Chinese?
Actually, yes, it is. That might be changing, although, so there is a, if you read So I recently read Sheng Yen. I mentioned Zen Master Sheng Yen. So not only is it common for Korean and Japanese and Vietnamese monks to study Chinese as part of their education, the Chinese that the chants and the sutras are written in is classical Chinese. So even though the characters are mostly the same as modern Chinese, it's like, if you know Italian, you don't know Latin, okay? So, and so even and also many, so when Zen Master Sheng Yen became a monk at the age of 15, he came from a very poor family, although he was actually had a moderate amount of education by that time, and he was quite he wasn't good at much of anything, but he was very sickly, very weak, and he had a lot of trouble like learning the chants. And anyway, but one thing he was actually fairly good at was learning classical Chinese. And this is actually Thich Nhat Hanh in when he tells the story of when he became a monk. I think he first became a monk at the age of 16. The very first thing the very first instruction that he was given was to memorize 40 verses in classical Chinese, which were gathas that all the monks were supposed to memorize and recite at different times of the day as part of their own personal practice. When you hear the bell in the morning, you do this. When you brush your teeth, you do this. When you're doing laundry, you do this gatha. And these are and the gathas are they're teaching. So the I don't want to give the long answer, but the short answer is yes. The one time that I visited Korea, most of the time I was there, I was just doing a silent meditation retreat for 90 days. We had a little bit of time to do a little touring around Korea, and one of the places that we went was Zen Master Kyung Ho's old temple, which is now a nun's temple in Korea. And one of the places that we went to in the temple was the place where all the nuns were learning Chinese characters. And so almost all of the teachings of East Asian Buddhism are still studied in classical Chinese. At the same time, along with that, there are translations into modern Korean, modern Japanese, modern Mandarin, modern Vietnamese that people make use of. But just like a lot of times those translations have to be viewed the way we need to view translations in English, is like, well, what did they really say? And if you want to know what they really said, then you have got to, and you do, and this is part of monastic education. Although there are, especially in Vietnam and Korea, there's a lot of nationalistic sort of pushback against that these days among some Buddhists that prefer to have everything in Korean or in Vietnamese. But the tradition up until the 20th century, and even to a great extent into the 21st century, is that learning classical Chinese is part of the education of all monastics and any layperson who's seriously interested in studying Buddhism. In fact, when Mangang, so Mangang was the teacher of Kobang, who is the teacher of Sungsan. Almost all of Mangang's teachings are in classical Chinese, and so they have to produce Korean. So for ordinary Koreans to be able to read the teachings of one of the greatest, Zen teachers in modern Korean history, they have to be translated into Korean. Which is kind of interesting. So the plus side of that, okay, so it's obviously that creates a barrier for people, to get to the real deal. You have to learn classical Chinese. The plus side of that is that even if you learn a little bit of classical Chinese, which I know very little bit, then you are beginning to get an entry to all of it. You don't have to learn Vietnamese, Korean, Japanese, and Mandarin. You don't have to, and so one of the disadvantages with translating something into English is that Buddhist texts have been translated into English now for long enough that the stuff that was translated 200 years ago is in a kind of English that people can't read anymore or don't read anymore, you know? And so when classical Chinese is not a vernacular language, it's a classical language, and so it doesn't change over time. So anyway, that's probably more of an answer than you really wanted, but it's a really fascinating subject. And the Kanzeon chant is kind of a good way to get your toe in the water of, looking at these characters and of seeing that you can actually see what it means. Just if you look at one character at a time, it actually is not that. I mean, to see that one character at a time, Jo Raku Gajo, means permanence, happiness, self, and purity. That's straightforward. But what does that mean? That's the real question.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, thanks for the question. Yeah. So I know I didn't see your Moke talk tonight, Mark, and I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, but it's not. You don't have to have any musical talent, which I don't. With practice, you can learn to keep the beat. And one of the best ways of learning to keep the beat is by listening to recordings and playing your Moke talk or your frog rasp or whatever you have to beat on. People have used, you can use a coffee cup, a coffee can, an empty coffee can, and a pencil. I know people who have practiced doing the Moke talk with the coffee can and a pencil. Oh, nice. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, that looks kind of like the one that Amazon has. Oh, it's a little bit bigger than the one that Amazon has. Yeah. Oh, you're muted, Tom. Can you unmute so we can hear it? Good. Yeah, I couldn't hear it very well. It's probably your settings are cutting it out. But does that one bounce very well? Yeah.
Oh, a little bit, not as well as yours there.
Well, yeah. So the difference here is that, so for the sound, sometimes people like a softer, like that has like a soft head to hit the Moke talk with, yeah. And some people like the sound of that, but something that's soft won't bounce nearly as well as something that's hard.
I also toned down my output because it used to be that when I'd be on with other people, the sound of the strike was so loud it'd kind of blow your ears out.
And so like the recording that we use of the Kanzeon chant, sometimes when I'm wearing headphones, the bell sound is too much for me. It's okay if you're not wearing headphones. Tonight, it didn't bother me that much. And I think that's because the one that I played tonight was actually a recording of a recording. And I think it muffled out the bell sound a little bit. When I use the straight recording and I'm wearing headphones, it really kind of goes through me. Hi, Mark. I see you're unmuted. You going to show us your Moke talk?
It's just a regular one.
Yeah. Nice.
I agree with you. There's times when they're kind of easy to find, and then as, I guess it's I've got one, and I want to show you, but it's down in the basement. I'll
okay.
Next week, but it's a homemade one.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, and actually on YouTube, there's at least a couple of different videos of people making Moke talks of like Korean crafts people and how they make Moke talks. Not that I could, so sometimes YouTube videos, you can watch the YouTube video and then you know how to do it. I don't think this is really a case for that. I think it takes years of dedication to kind of master that skill, which is why none of my moke talks or frog rasps they're all handmade, but not by me.
I didn't make this one either, but it was I got it in a trade a long time ago.
Okay, what did I do there? Okay, and so are there other questions or topics you want to look into? I went pretty quickly over the both the history and the meaning of the chant. There's a lot more that can be said about those things, and then we did some some live demonstrations of actually saying the chant, which is good. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier, the chickpea earlier. And
yes.
for anyone that didn't know what that was, here's the chickpea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And we couldn't, at least I couldn't hear that. I'm going to grab mine.
For this stuff to come across on Zoom, we have to reconfigure our.
Yeah. Let me just see how this sounds. Okay.
Yeah, yours is a much higher snap than mine.
Yeah. So I fiddled around with my Zoom settings. Well, I mean, after years, literally, of not realizing that when I was hitting the bell, to at the beginning and the ending of sitting periods, that it just sounded like. Clunk, clunk. Finally, somebody told me, "Hey, we can't hear it," and I had to fix it. Yeah.
During COVID, we didn't go to temple, and we did everything online.
Bye, Tiffany. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. And it just took a lot of adjustment and getting used to.
Yeah. In fact, I've told some people that I'm going to make a YouTube video that shows how to adjust your Zoom settings so that things like the moke talk and a bell sounds reasonably good. Yeah. Oh, so one thing I did want to raise before we go, and if anybody wants to ask or talk about anything else, that's good too. But so we've done the evening bell chant, and we've done the Kanzeon chant in this kind of setting of like spending one meeting where we just talk about one chant and kind of drill down into it. So what should we do next? I have an idea, but I'm very open to suggestions. I prefer not to do anything in Tibetan. I prefer to stick with the chants that we as a group, use. So what I'm leaning towards right now is doing the Heart Sutra, but breaking it up, so that we could focus on. And so this isn't the only way we could go, but what I would like to do is spend one class on the Heart Sutra in English, which is, since it's in, and then spend 3 classes on the Heart Sutra in the Korean version and break it up into sections. And then that would be like spending, 4 meetings on the Heart Sutra, which I think the Heart Sutra merits that degree, that amount of focus. So we might do that.
And you said you had done the evening bell chant.
Yeah. So
kind of makes you need to ask the question, what about the morning bell chant?
So the morning bell chant, that would be a long series of classes on the morning bell chant, but that would be good to do too. I love the morning bell chant. So it's much longer. And actually, I should say it's longer, but it's usually done relatively slowly, and so it seems even longer than it really is. But it's quite a beautiful chant, and that's definitely something that should be in the. I wouldn't do it as the next one because I want to focus on chants that people are already doing as part of their practice, and At Furnace Mountain, they don't do the morning bell chant anymore. I do it on my own when I get up early enough to do it before the 7 o'clock online chanting, which is about half the time. I get it in, and I chant along with the. There's a really nice recording on YouTube by Hye Tong Sunim, I think. Anyway, but yeah, the morning bell chant is great. Okay, if there isn't anything else, then we should chant Kanzeon one more time, or maybe, yeah, let's just chant it one more time. And I'll lead. Maybe 3. We'll do three repetitions with me leading it. Oh, Tom's gone. Doesn't want to hear me chant it again. I don't blame him. Enmai Jukku Kannon Kanzeon namu butsu yo butsu en buppo so en joraku ga jo chonen kanzeon bonen kanzeon nennen jushin ki nennen furishin kanzeon namu butsu yo butsu en buppo so en joraku ga jo chonen kanzeon bonen kanzeon nennen jushin ki nennen furishin kanzeon namu butsu yo butsu en buppo so en joraku ga jo chonen kanzeon bonen kanzeon nennen jushin ki nennen furishin. Well, thanks so much for everybody for coming, and I hope anybody who's watching this YouTube video get something out of it. And the best way to get something out of the Kanzeon chant is just to do it, and it doesn't take long before. And I'm sorry, I forgot to display the words during the when we just did it, but it doesn't take that much to. Oh, I think Tom didn't intend to leave. He's trying to get back in now. It doesn't take that much to learn it by heart. And once you learn it by heart, I know I'm not the only person who's had this experience. You will hear that chant in the back of your mind, just playing by itself. And it's quite nice to hear that. Sometimes I don't mind hearing Donna Summer or, the Cars or whatever playing in the back of my mind. That's okay. But when you just hear Kanzeon pop up all on its own, that's pretty nice too. I like it. So thanks everybody. And I'll see you all soon. Oh yeah, just the other thing is that we are going to be doing Medicine Buddha practice on Saturday at 6 p.m. And it would be great to see all of you there. Or it'd be great to see you anytime, anywhere. Bye-bye, everyone.